thank Debbie for the meditation and say that we definitely don't want to forget the meditation today, because as you listen to what I have to say, you'll find out that the meditation is actually the most important part of the service today and what I have to talk about. And what I want to talk about is spiritual coping. And it also happens to be what the title of our newsletter was this week. And how I arrived at using that for the newsletter was I chose spiritual coping or coping as what I wanted to lecture on this week or speak on this week. And then I developed a newsletter around that theme. And as everyone who's listening to me, most people listening to me know, that when I speak, I like to choose a Bible verse or Bible verses to start my talk. So as usual, I tried to find Bible verses to support what I wanted to speak on today. And I found something very interesting. I researched several of the concordances that I have, and then went online and searched Bible concordances. And do you know, there is not a single reference in the Bible to the word cope. And there's only one reference to the word coping in the Bible, and it refers to coping on a fence or coping on a brick structure, not coping as we would normally use the word. So I found that very, very interesting. So I still have some verses that I chose from the Bible that I want to share with you. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can't accomplish a little thing like that, what's the use of worrying over bigger things? And that's from Luke 12:25-26. And I have one more scripture that I want to share with you. And I share this one with you because it's been probably most of my life my favorite scripture of all the scriptures in the Bible. And not just it being my favorite, but it actually fits what I want to talk about. And that comes from Isaiah 40:31. But those who trust in the Lord will find a new strength. They will soar high on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. Coping, and the word coping means to face and deal with responsibilities, problems, or difficulties successfully or in a calm or adequate manner. Well, we're certainly in a time of responsibilities, problems, and difficulties. So we definitely, it would be to our advantage to understand coping and coping mechanisms. And why do I want to talk about this? Because it seems like almost every week that we have heard things that address situations, difficulties, and current situations that we in the world are in. But recently, I've heard a lot of talk about how we're getting tired of hearing about the current situations. Daily reports, daily updates, even talking about it during our services, etc. And some of those comments have been made to the effect that people didn't think it was appropriate to keep talking about it. Well, it so happens that it's our daily life now. And so we're going to talk about it one more time today. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week, but we're going to talk about the situations and coping this week. And Paul Harvey kind of summed it up some years ago. And I'm talking about a long time ago. Most people, well, a lot of people here do know who Paul Harvey is, but the younger people don't know who Paul Harvey is, okay? And Paul Harvey said he was a radio personality. Paul Harvey said, in times like these, it is good to remember that there have always been times like these. If there have always been times like these, what's different now? Perhaps it's information overload. There may have been times like these, but there has never been information like it is now. It is instantaneous. We have TV, radio, internet, cell phones, which have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and numerous other social media sites bombarding us continuously and adding to our stress level. So it's like we have all these devices now. And the only other way that would make it any more bombarding to us if it was wired directly to our minds. But we're the ones who choose to listen to the bombardment that's around us. And I'd like to quote another person from the past, and that person is William James. William James was a psychologist and a philosopher, and he was considered to be the father of American psychology. And William James said, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. I want to read that again. The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. William James. So what does that imply? Do we just simply ignore everything that causes us stress? Ignoring the current situation or any situation that causes us stress does not change them or make them go away or help us cope with them. Ignoring only leads to ignorance, and ignorance only leads to darkness. We need light at this time. We need awareness at this time. We need enlightenment at this time. We need minds that are sharp so that we make our own intelligent choices and decisions to be leaders, not followers. We need minds that are sharp so that we make our own intelligent choices and decisions and be leaders, not followers. Knowing, awareness, and enlightenment about current situations does not change them or make them go away. However, it does help us cope with them and make our own decisions rather than following others blindly into darkness. And my point here on that is, I see on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, my phone every day, and I looked at it this morning, and it said I averaged 49 minutes a day on my phone last week. So I am bombarding myself with a lot of information. And a lot of what I see indicates to me that people in general are no longer using their mind. They're no longer using their intellect, and they're no longer using their heart. Instead, they're looking at someone else and asking for someone else to give them direction. So they're becoming followers, not leaders. in thought I'm thinking of. We can't do that. We cannot have and achieve enlightenment and be in the light and out of the darkness if we give up what is in our mind and in our heart and in our intellect to someone else and simply follow someone else because they are with some group, organization, political expression, or whatever. No matter what, seeing the light and being enlightenment means I stop, I look, I take responsibility for my thoughts and what's in my mind and how I think and how I apply those thoughts. I don't give it up to someone else. Debbie and I have talked about this numerous times, and we can't help but not talk about it when we look at Facebook and look at the comments that people are making about things and say, where is intellect on that? What is that person thinking? How can they even express such a thing? Well, I don't know that it is in my preview to even have the ability to question what another person should be thinking or saying. But we even carry it further in our conversations, and I know good well I've not shared this with anybody at the chapel, but I'm going to share it with you now so you'll have an idea of my frame of thought on things and people. And this doesn't mean I'm judging them, just means that I'm putting them in categories so I can see how things look, and so I can understand in my own mind how I'm going to think about something and what I want to do about it. Do I want to be a follower and say, because Joe said this, I'm going to believe that? No, I'm not. I'm going to make up my mind to take responsibility for the thoughts that I have in my mind. And when I speak to someone, it's going to be because I've thought about it, not because somebody told me about it. It's going to be because I looked at it from what's in my heart and what's in my mind, and I'm going to think it through. And I'm not going to respond with the first thought that comes from something someone else has given me. I am going to look at it and think it through. And we've talked, and when Debbie and I talk now, we talk about, and I would have to admit to you, this is probably not the very best way to be, but we can't be all saints every day, every minute of our life. And we're not going to be saints every minute, every day of our life. We're human beings. We're going to have human feelings. We're going to have human expressions, and we're going to express them to each other. So when Debbie and I talk about this, here's our communication when we listen to people. I categorize them, okay? And I'm not saying Debbie categorized them, but she hadn't done it. I never heard her do it except in conversation with me, okay? Here's the group of people. When I look at the world situation and how I see things going on and on Facebook and everywhere else that I look at, the categories are cabbages, cows, coyotes, and eagles. Everybody knows what a cabbage is. Cabbages don't think before they speak. Matter of fact, cabbages can't even speak. So the words that come out of their mouth, look at them from that point of reference. Next one is cows. Cows are herding animals. And we hear about that quite often right now, about the herd technology. And when are we going to reach the herding point? We're on this coronavirus thing where the herd point has been reached. The next one's coyotes. Coyotes are sharp. They're also tricksters, but they're sharper on the next up on the level. The next one is eagles. And the eagles fly above everything else and look down. And they view it. And they view it from a point of decision-making and intellect. And they act on their own. They are not followers. Every person that I'm speaking here at this minute, I perceive to be an eagle. If you weren't, you wouldn't be listening to me. So, where am I going with all this? Ignoring, denial, ignorance are not the most valid means of coping with the stress in our lives right now. So why doesn't our spiritual awareness, our spiritual enlightenment, just lift us above all of the turmoil of the world at this time? Why can't we just be up in the air all the time, flying like the eagle? Why do we need to cope with the situations? If we're in the ego category, why do we need to cope with these situations? Why do we even need to have and use coping skills? Because if we are truly spiritual beings in physical form, we are walking a path of compassion, love, and light. The path of compassion opens our hearts to the feelings of our fellow human beings, both those on and those seeking the spiritual path. The more aware we are, the more compassionate we are, the more sensitive we are to the chaos and turmoil around us. So, being aware, being compassionate, and being open makes us more sensitive to the chaos and turmoil around us. So, if we are more sensitive than the average population, than everybody running around, than the cabbages, the cows, the coyotes, then we need coping mechanisms because of our sensitivity. The more aware we are, the more sensitive we are. Our sensitivity to the stimuli of life makes it necessary for us to also have coping skills to live and be at peace amidst chaos and turmoil. No wonder I hear people, I'm talking about chapel people now, say, why do we want to talk about these things? And the question comes because of their sensitivity. They are sensitive to the situation. But that doesn't mean because we are sensitive that we want to enter into denial and not be aware of what's going on around us. We still need to be open in our sensitivity. Coping does not mean that the problems or difficulties go away. They don't. Coping means that we deal with them successfully in a calm and adequate manner. So what are some good coping mechanisms available to us? And the first one, the very first one and most important one is meditation. Debbie did the meditation this morning. When we're in the meditative state, that is one of the most important coping skills. So meditation and prayer combined are the number one coping mechanism. You are aware of and practice meditation and prayer. You are aware of how to listen to God and when to speak to God. You are also aware of the need to lift both body, mind, and spirit. And everyone I'm talking to right now, it's like the old cliche talking to the choir. Everyone I'm talking to already knows this. But you have friends, relatives, associates who might not know this. And you even may need a refresher on some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. Because, as I said before, your sensitivity makes you open to stress. And if you're open to stress, you need to remember your coping mechanisms. And the stress, as I see it right now, is not going away anytime soon. So what I'm talking about may be prevalent for a while. And I have another quote I'd like to share with you. And this is from Marilyn Fulgham. We have two strategies for coping: the way of avoidance or the way of attention. We have two strategies for coping: the way of avoidance or the way of attention. There are a couple of charts in the newsletter this week that provided examples of coping mechanisms. I'm going to talk a little bit about them. However, I suggest that you take a second look at the newsletter and the charts. They contain some excellent suggestions for coping with any situation. And you might even want to consider printing them out, stick them on the refrigerator, or give them to somebody that you think could use some coping mechanisms. And the first one the first chart was coping mechanisms in the ecological system. The majority of what I'm going to say here, you really already know, and you really already practice, and possibly just listening to me say it will remind you of one you're not using right now and might want to add to your daily coping skills or routines. And this chart is divided into 4 circles that go around the main circle of the coping mechanism. The first is mental and emotional, journaling. We talk about journaling at the chapel all the time. Journaling is a coping mechanism. Self-awareness. We talk about self-awareness. Mantra. We use mantras in meditation. Skills building, acceptance, and hope. Those are mental and emotional coping mechanisms. Physical coping mechanisms. The physical coping mechanisms are sports and exercise, walking and hiking, music and singing, deep breathing, nutritional, yoga, and Reiki. All of those, again, we are fully aware of. I would like to expand on one of those or 2 of those, and that is walking, hiking. Me, I like the outdoors. The outdoors, to me, is a very valid coping mechanism. I don't just walk outside. I walk outside and I look. I got bird feed. I must have
100.
Maybe not 100, but I got bird feeders all over the place. I feed the squirrels, I feed the birds, I feed the deer. The deer walk up to the house looking for their food now. I go out in the morning and stand on the deck, and there's a deer standing there looking me in the eyes. I talk to the deer. The deer talks to me. Don't get me wrong, I'm okay. He doesn't speak in words, but he speaks in words that I understand. And he's standing there asking me in the morning, where's my food? Why haven't you put it out yet? And I'll tell the deer, okay, give me just a minute and I'll be around the back and your food will be on the ground. So, talking to the animals, walking among the animals, looking at the trees, looking at the grass, looking at the flowers, singing, listening to music. These are all coping mechanisms. We may not normally look at them as such, but they are. They help us ground, and they help us ground in a spiritual way by connecting to nature, connecting to the inner aspect of self through singing and through music. Music reaches us emotionally and spiritually. Spiritual is the next coping mechanism. Faith-based spirituality, gratitude, meaning, altruism, empowerment, all things that we talk about, all things that we practice. We just need to remember that they are there within us, and we need to call on them if we need to. And social support is the last group. Social support means family, community, health, mental health, legal, skills building, meaningful activity, and humanitarianism. We may not be able to connect in community in the manner that we have in the past, but we can still connect in community. We are connecting in community right now, right this instant, via this Zoom service. This is maintaining our community. We may not be meeting in a physical place, and we may not be touching physically, but we are still touching. So we are maintaining an established community. Maintaining that community is a coping skill. And maintaining that community keeps us in connection with those that we have available to us in time of need, if we have need. There's another chart, and as I said before, these charts are in the newsletter, okay? There's another chart, and it was written from the perspective of a child, okay? Sometimes the perspective of a child is probably the most important perspective to have. And here are some of the coping mechanisms or coping skills that are on that chart. And I suggest you take a look at that chart also. It has good and poor coping skills written on the chart. Good coping skills: use positive self-talk, deep breathing, taking a shower, going for a walk, doing something creative, exercising, talking to a friend, playing a sport or game, hanging out with friends, taking time out, using I feel messages, and counting to 10. Sometimes before we speak, if we read something that we really don't like and it really strikes us and pushes our buttons, maybe we just simply need to stop for a minute and count to 10. Some poor coping mechanisms. And if you look at Facebook, I like Facebook, okay? So I look at it from both perspectives. If you look at Facebook, there's some examples of poor coping mechanisms on Facebook. So and here are some of those, and these are not, and these are poor. Remember, I'm getting ready to say these are poor. Don't use these. These are not the coping mechanisms you want to use. Name calling or insulting, becoming violent, spreading rumors, yelling and screaming, hurting yourself, threatening, doing something dangerous, shutting down, pretending like you don't care, blaming other people, negative self-talk, avoiding family and friends. That's what I would like to leave you with from what I've had to say. And I hope what I've had to say has come across positively and not negatively, because that was my intention, for it to come across positively. Enhance your coping skills this week. Make a to-do list for the week, but make it simple so that it's easy to follow. And some of the things that you could put on your to-do list that are simple and easy to follow, I also put in the newsletter. Count my blessings. Practice kindness. Let go of what I can't control. Listen to my heart. Be productive yet calm. And when all else fails, just breathe. Thank you for allowing me to share.